Hello, everyone. Welcome to 5 Reasons Not to Harm Your Family or Loved Ones During the Quarantine. Today is actually day, I think, of us doing these broadcasts, and there is so much today. So I'm glad that yesterday was so short. I'm outside enjoying the sunshine, and I've moved my computer and my whole remote office outside. And at least the vitamin D is making me feel better and trying not to worry so much about what's going on. As most of you know, yesterday Governor Whitmer, as anticipated, closed the rest of the year. I found it really, really interesting that our chief medical executive, the doctor who's on with her, was commenting about how we are not at the spike of the curve yet, and we are continuing to have more cases. And as we have more cases and as education comes to a roaring halt in brick and mortar schools for the rest of the school year, issues that. But before we get to schools, I wanted to update you. There are a lot of concerns out there about the stay-home order. Violate the stay-home order. I think it's very interesting for everyone to know that, and I'm just trying to find the announcement in my little stack here. Here it is. That as of the price for Governor Whitmer's stay-at-home order being violated went up. It used to be a misdemeanor, a possible 90 days in jail, or a $500 fine. Now you can have a civil fine of $1,000, and also you can have the $500 criminal fine, or you could get the jail sentence. It's highly unlikely that a violation is going to get you actually arrested and not just given a ticket at this point, because the jails are really, really struggling. It's kind of like a cruise ship. There's not a lot of places to quarantine. There's not a lot of places to social distance. And the population is constantly changing and coming in and out, not just with the population of inmates, but also the employees, the deliveries, the everything going. So that is something, it will now be very, very expensive at a minimum if you are caught violating the stay-at-home order. If anybody wants more information about that, there was a great article in the Free Press on April 2nd, which was yesterday, by Darcy Moran, which really explains it quite well and has a lot of links to other resources about the stay-at-home order. And if anybody has any questions, I can see who's logging on and who's watching, but if you have any questions, please just put them in the comments, and I'm happy to answer them as we go. Where to go next? To school or to court orders? Or to parenting time? So many things today. Okay, let's talk for a minute about the school closures, since that just happened. And really, as we talked about a couple days ago, we talked about a little bit yesterday, the IDEA wasn't implemented to contemplate this situation. And if a school district is providing education to general ed students, they must provide it to special ed students. That is not negotiable. Every student in Michigan is guaranteed a free public education, and that must occur. The problem is that we have these IEPs that have been contemplated of being serviced within a brick and mortar school. And now we don't necessarily have a teacher, we have a parent. And if we do have a teacher as a parent, they're probably teaching. They're probably not teaching their own kids. So again, shout out, thank you to all of the teachers out there who are doing learning and online curriculum and distance learning and all that stuff. So as we talked about before, it's really, really important to get in touch with the team that created your child's IEP and make sure that you work out some creative solutions. And this is, even when teachers are sending home lessons, whether it be written materials or a PowerPoint or whatever it is, those lessons were written for gen ed students. So we really need to make sure that they're adapted and have that conversation with whoever is providing them, whoever the learning source is or what the mechanism is, and make sure that every student can take advantage. The other thing, a lot of students who have IEPs or have special needs or disabilities are not used to working independently and really struggle to work independently. And if they do work independently, it's usually not for very long. The attention span is not very extensive. So we have to make sure that when we are creating these distance learning IEPs, that we talk about two things. We can't assume that the child can learn independently and do work independently. And we also have to discuss if there either is no technology or if it's limited, or if the the student cannot use it without a parent or an adult or an instructor or some education source. So those are all things that need to be considered. We all know special needs children thrive on routine and schedule and consistency. And what's working for you guys, for you parents, as far as, we talked about, buying one of those giant calendars and putting it on the wall and having your child kind of figure out what schedule they want to be on. And then every day you do that schedule, putting in specials or field trips that are also on the Facebook page is a great thing to do to break up the day, just like it would be if they were in school. So there were some really creative ideas. They're on the Facebook page. I may repost them so they're all together, because there's museums, there's zoos, there's some performances by either Broadway or opera or children's plays. For really young kids, Dolly Parton's doing a series where she's doing story time. That's really awesome. So there's a lot of resources to incorporate into your at-home learning. The most important thing, and this is, I think, where you really have to advocate for your child. And I guess if you need me to advocate for you, which I hope it doesn't get to that point, I can do that too. But some of these districts are putting a hold on learning because they haven't developed a plan yet. And that's not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. There are creative solutions out there. They're being taught all over the country. There's no reason why one school district cannot rise to the level of some alternative creative plan to implement a learning experience for every student. A couple other things about our current state of at home. As we all know, President Trump and Governor Whitmer are not going for tea anytime soon. But there was a federal relief package that President Trump signed that offers Betsy DeVos, the education secretary, the opportunity to go one step further. She has 30 days to seek waivers for additional provisions of the IDEA in order to provide schools with limited flexibility. Well, okay, they're doing something, but that's not good for our kids. What that means is that they're waiving a civil right to their education, to the same free and appropriate public education as general ed students. And it's not okay. So, parents, again, this falls on you. You're going to have to advocate. You're going to have to really work as the teacher and with the teacher and with the rest of the committee. And really, I can give you lots of resources and lots of people in other states that are doing a pretty good job. I'll try to post some of those on the Kirsch Satawa Facebook page so that you can at least have a forum to talk about some creative solutions. Maybe I'll just organize a forum. That might be kind of cool, actually. I love the Zoom thing. So that is, basically what's happening on the education front. And so let's move to when people are court ordered to do things that normally would happen in a very routine way. If you're on probation, parole, supervised release, if you're being monitored by the court for to have your children returned to you as part of a reunification plan, or if in a divorce, custody, post-judgment matter, if you have a situation where right now there might be a supervised parenting time or there may be limited parenting time, and a parent has to do certain things in order for that to progress. If you're in any one of those situations, let's talk about that. What's happening? So first, it's really, really difficult, especially, and we'll start with the one that's, the closest to my heart and my pet peeve in the world, and that's these reunification situations where parents face termination of parental rights if they do not make progress at reunification, complete their services in 15 months. And that, if that is, and actually in Michigan, it's even less, it's 364 days. So what that does is that now the two things have happened. We now have suspended in-person parenting. No matter what the circumstances are, when a judge is looking at the bond between the kids and the parents, there's no way that it can be as strong or as uninhibited and natural if you're getting 5 minutes on FaceTime a day instead of 5 days a week, 5 nights a week in your home. There's no way. So that's one problem. The other problem is a lot of the services that you need to do, that you need to complete, parenting classes, therapy, group therapy, drug treatment, going to AANA, doing testing, all of that stuff is in groups. And a lot of those places are not even open anymore. So we have this time deadline for reunification, yet we have no place to do the services. They're not available. Obviously, the law never contemplated this. And this is where it becomes necessary for us to go into court on an emergency basis. And instead of getting penalized for not doing the services and violating whatever your circumstances, we need to have it modified. We need to have it put on hold temporarily, or we just need to get rid of it. Before, if you failed to comply, you would be thrown in jail. Now, the deputies don't even want to come near you because they don't want to have contact with you so that you can go to jail. And the courts aren't necessarily hearing these hearings because they're not considered emergencies. A lot of these violations are considered technical. So we have an access to court problem. That it's not essential and it's not an emergency. And so we need to be talking to the courts through motions and We're about to have a dog fight behind me. Not really. They're on separate sides of the fence. They are exercising social distancing. They're quite cute, but they're a little loud, so I apologize. But so we do, just like with the bond motions and getting our loved ones out of jail or out of prison, this is another area that we must get into court. In Michigan now, we have over 10,000 cases of COVID-19, and because of that, it's just going to become more and more difficult, either as people get sick and more resources close, or more guidelines, stricter stay at home. We have to have these court orders changed, whether it's for parenting time or any of the required services that are in place, the monitoring services. There has to be alternatives and creative alternatives, or people are just going to violate. And then as soon as they take, their finger off the pause button in the courts, it's going to be so busy, it's going to be so unbelievably difficult to comply at that point, because it'll just be too many people, just a rush of everyone trying to do the same thing. In Indiana, they're actually using a system where the agent calls the person who they're monitoring. They make an arrangement. The agent leaves a drug test in the parking lot of the court, and then they do their drug test right there in the parking lot, and then they leave it there, and the agent gets it, and they drive away. But we have a requirement in Michigan that all those drug tests have to be supervised. Literally, a human being standing, 2 feet away from the person who's doing the test, making sure that, they don't have someone else's urine hidden in their waistband, or any other creative tricks that I've heard over the last 27 years for how to get a clean drug screen if you are using. So that's something that we can't ignore, and we really, really need to deal with. Parenting time. Let's go there really quick, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. Parenting time, I keep throwing it in little bits and pieces, but the bottom line is parenting time orders must be enforced. Parenting time orders are in full force and effect. And one of my favorite judges just joined us, and I hope she pipes in with her opinion. Good afternoon, Judge Gant. So if your parenting time order is impossible because you're worried about something, that's not going to cut it. That's not going to get you into court. It absolutely must be essential for us to file an emergency motion to modify or change or stop or whatever you want to do with parenting time. And it can't just be because you want to. It can't be based on speculation and not knowing. It has to, or fear. It has to be based on real facts. So the call that I've gotten over and over and over again is one where I don't want to send my child to their other parent's house because they live with this person and they have a child, and the other person's child's going back and forth between their parents. I don't know this other person, and I don't know what kind of quarantining they're doing with their child, so I don't want my child to go there. Not going to fly. You are never going to win that argument. Better argument, more creative solution. Let's talk to the other parent. Let's communicate. Imagine that, like not running to court. And let's just get to the bottom of what the fears are and what's real, and work it out if you can. Obviously, if you can't, then we might have to go to court. But this is a time when you don't want to go to court because the judges are so busy, and they are really, we can file everything in the world, but if they don't deem it to be an emergency and something that is essential to the best interest of the child right now, they may not choose to hear it or to look at it. So they're dealing with very urgent matters. And a lot of them are life and death matters. So we need to be cautious, and we need to try everything else first. So the other issue with children and with that situation in particular that I just described with the other parent and the speculation is maybe they have parenting time not in that house and not with that other child there. Maybe you just need to change the schedule. So that's why you have to talk. It has to be real before we go to court, before you call me. So other things about parenting time. We have some conflicts, of course. One of the conflicts we have is this notion of no in-person parenting time if your child is in foster care or under any sort of supervised parenting time obligation. The issue has been looked at on the national level by the Department of Health and Human Services. Again, this is from the Administration for Children and Families, Administration on Children, Youth, and Families. This was authored March 27th, 2020. And again, this is from the federal authorities. And it says, with no uncertain terms, that, and I'll post this so that you guys can have it, because you might need to use it in court. But the first thing it says, and this is kind of just reiterates what I just said, that they're encouraging attorneys to resolve agreed upon issues via stipulated order. For example, if all parties agree that a child in foster care can be reunified with his or her family immediately, that issue should be resolved via stipulated order rather than waiting weeks or months for an in-person court hearing. Well, there's a couple things about that. First of all, this is federal, so this does not mean that this is what Michigan's doing. But in Michigan, if we are filing these kind of stipulated orders, or we are filing for a hearing, we have a court rule, 2.119E2 and 3, that allows judges to decide things without a hearing, just relying on our written pleadings and what we give them when we file and ask for relief. So also in this federal document, it says that administrative offices of the courts are to discourage or refrain from issuing blanket court orders reducing or suspending family time, and be mindful of the need for continued family time, especially in times of crisis and heightened anxiety. Remain cognizant that interruption or cessation of family time and parent-child contact can be traumatic for children. And continue to hold the Child Welfare Agency accountable for ensuring that meaningful, frequent family time continues. And then the rest talks about some guidance of how to do not in-person parenting time, FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, whatever. But the problem that we're running into, and again, this is when anytime you're dealing with the Department of Health and Human Services in Michigan, you are dealing with policy. And they think their policy is the bee's knees, queen of all. But it's not. The judge is. And court orders should trump policy. So if you have a situation where the worker is saying you're going to have 5 minutes on FaceTime twice a day, and the child was in their parents' home for days and nights a week, that is considered, in my opinion, first of all, a violation of the court order, because that certainly cannot be seen as being, even if it's as broad as regular and frequent or in the discretion of the worker, that I don't think that cuts it. I just don't think that cuts it. So in those circumstances, we have to be creative, and we have to point them to the federal guidelines, the federal policies. We have to tell them that in Governor Whitmer's stay home order, she specifically exempts parenting time. You are allowed to leave your house for parenting time exchanges. But then DHHS and the policymakers up the chain, they decided that there would be no face-to-face parenting time. And they made a blanket policy. And that blanket policy is denying parents their constitutional right to parent their kids. And as I talked about earlier, it also, the timeline didn't stop for reunification because they're not allowed to have face-to-face in-person visits right now. The bond isn't, just paused and it'll be where it was. Reunification efforts have come to a roaring halt on many, many services. So court orders trump everything. So if you have a situation that some sort of blanket solution has been imposed that contradicts the court order, or if the court order needs to be changed to accomplish your purpose, those are things that we do need to go to court for. These are essential. We're protecting the rights of parents and children to be together, especially if they're on their way to reunification, which is a Herculean task in itself. The other thing I just wanted to point out to everyone is on March 31st, 2020, there was a letter from Ju Young Chang, the Executive Director, Children's Service Agency, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, to parents. I had one of my clients forward this to me. And it updates the prior letter of March 20th that we talked about last week. And they are interpreting Judge Whitmer's Executive Order 2020-21, which temporarily suspends activities that are not required to sustain or protect life. And they said, this means in-person visits with your child are not permitted at this time. This restriction is in place until 4/13/20. MDHHS will revisit this restriction at that time and will resume in-person family contact as soon as possible. Note, limited exceptions may be made if there is a risk of severe psychological harm to the child if in-person visits do not occur. Exceptions must be approved by the Executive Director of the Children's Service Agency. This is new. This just came out a couple days ago, and this is what we were asking for when the initial blanket suspension of parenting time came out, was some procedure to show that this family or this situation is not like the others. And, it's not going to make a tremendous difference if a parent is getting 1 hour a week supervised in the agency and now they're getting that time by FaceTime or by Zoom, if it's, an older child. But there's a lot of kids who have parenting time that are 2, 3, babies, infants, 4 or 5, every age. There's, I think, 162,000 kids in foster care at any given time in this country. So, we need to keep all of that in mind, and that's why blanket policies and blanket orders don't work, because every child is different. They have different needs, they have different bonds, they have different ages, and they're in a different place with their parents. You can't say that, because this mom is teaching this, 2-year-old how to count, and this mom over here is teaching colors, that they shouldn't be treated, based on what their individual situations are, because they should. There's a reason that one of them's learning numbers and one of them's learning colors. So there is a link, 19 resources and tips for caregivers. I'm sorry, that isn't what it's called. It's called COVID-19 Resources and Tips for Caregivers, 684823_7.pdf, and I'll try to post this up there. I'm also trying to post everything on the Kirsch Satawa website, and I think we're getting closer. It might actually launch tomorrow. So well, it won't launch tomorrow. It'll launch Monday, but it will be up there tomorrow, I think. So that's pretty much what we are looking at as far as our updates on special ed, on parenting time, on children in foster care, what's happening in prisons and jails, the new $1,000 civil fine in addition to the $500 criminal fine or 90 days in jail for violating the stay-at-home order. And what else did we talk about? I feel like, and your court-ordered services and the creative solutions. And so I'm going to scroll through everybody and see if anybody has any questions or comments. And let me just look really quick. And okay, hold on. So the question is, if the teachers have not reached out with any sort of distance learning plan, is there anything we can do? Well, Governor Whitmer kicked the ball to the county and to the intermediate school districts, who then kicked it to the individual school districts. So if your school district is not reaching out, first make sure that it's not a technical error and you just don't know about it, because I found that is happening too. And you have other options. There's different educational plans out there. Brenda Mann is on our cast right now. Brenda, can you shoot me some different resources that I can give this watcher? There's Michigan Virtual High School, there's Brain Pop, there's Khan Academy, which is amazing, K through 12. And I'm just looking to see if she didn't give me any yet. She's reading. And I can certainly, you can call a neighboring district and see if you can have access to their learning. I know that your particular child is older and at high school age. And so, that's something that you definitely want to look at. There's also summer school, online summer schools that are now doing classes now. So there are some alternative avenues to find education for your child, even if your district isn't providing it. But a lot of these districts are going to provide it. They just haven't figured out how to do it yet. So it's a patience and communication resolution. But just be communicating with everyone, be kind, be patient. And hopefully, we'll be able to post some things on the page that might help you. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions. And for those of you who are new to watching, I do this every single day, Monday through Friday, from at 1:00 for as long as it takes for me to get through the update and for you to ask your questions. You can message me questions privately and I will reply to you and also answer them the next day during the little live cast here. And so I don't see any other questions for today. So I will see you all on Monday. And as I always end with, it's reason number 5 that you don't want to harm anyone, any of your loved ones while you're in quarantine. And that is because orange horizontal stripes don't look good really on anyone. So be healthy, stay happy, go get some vitamin D, and stay home. Let's get through this together. I'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.